NATO is currently carrying out airstrikes across Libya under a UN mandate to protect civilians from the forces of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, who is trying to crush the 3-month-old uprising. NATO attacks have recently concentrated on what the alliance says are military and logistics hubs in Tripoli. Afghanistan, 12 dead as protests over NATO raid. At least 12 people have been shot and killed by security forces in northern Afghanistan during a protest against a NATO-led raid, officials say. The clashes with security forces in the city of Talakwan left 80 others injured. Some 2,000 demonstrators, some of them armed, took part. They looted shops and tried to attack a German army base. 4 people, 2 of them women, were killed in the NATO-led raid. NATO said there were insurgents, protesters, and local police say all were civilians. The night raid deaths have been condemned by President Hamid Karzai, who said the Afghan government had repeatedly warned NATO about such irresponsible operations. A statement released by the president said that the government would now ask NATO commanders for further explanations into the exact circumstances of the incident. Civilian deaths at the hands of NATO forces are a major cause of anger among Afghans. An official in Talakwan said the Afghan National Army and a rapid reaction force had been deployed and the situation was now mostly under control. Reinforcement had been called in from neighboring Kunduz province, he said. The official said that some of the 2,000 demonstrators were armed and had destroyed public and private property. The protesters insist that those killed had nothing to do with insurgency. Unpopular raids. The violence appears to have begun when protesters, angered over the nighttime raid, placed the bodies of those killed in the main square of Talakwan. Chanting "Death to America" and "Death to President Karzai," they were confronted by police and security forces who opened fire as they headed towards the German base. Some of the crowd carried axes and shovels. A senior Afghan official in Thakar told reporters that 2 German soldiers were injured in the unrest. The official said the houses targeted in the night raid was a meeting point for several militant Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan (IMU) members. One report said that a senior IMU leader was killed. Indian aid program beset by corruption, World Bank. Attempts by the Indian government to combat poverty are not working, according to World Bank. The governing coalition spends billions of dollars, more than 2% of its gross domestic product, on helping the poor. But a new World Bank report says that programs are beset by corruption, bad administration, and underpayments. As an example of the report cites grain, only 40% of grain handed out for the poor reaches its intended target. India's coalition government is spending massively on programs to reduce poverty. It's really embarrassing. This was the first time India's major schemes had been evaluated. Sri Lanka urged to scrap emergency 2 years after war. India has urged Sri Lanka to scrap far-reaching emergency powers and prompt allegations of human rights violations. The emergency remains 2 years after the government's military defeat of Tamil Tigers on 18th May 2009. The Indian call came in a bilateral communique issued after talks in Delhi between the 2 countries' foreign ministers S.M. Krishna and J.L. Paris. It's an unusually frank message to the island nation from the closest international ally. The statement quotes Indian aid as saying that Colombo should ensure resettlement of all internally displaced people and promote genuine reconciliation. Mr. Krishna's remarks were described as a response to Sri Lankan Foreign Minister after he said that Colombo was taking a focused approach to both resettlement and reconciliation. India's central government has not commented publicly on a recent UN Commission report, in which a panel of experts said there was credible evidence that both sides in the Sri Lankan war may have committed war crimes. We'll move on to the business world. WTO Airbus ruling leaves both sides claiming victory. Both the US and Europe have claimed victory after the World Trade Organization (WTO) partly overturned an earlier ruling that Airbus received billions of euros in illegal subsidies. Airbus chief executive Tom Enders said it was a big win for Europe and the European Union had won on all key elements. However, US officials called it a definitive victory for the side. They said $18 billion in subsidies were still deemed to have broken rules and caused serious prejudice to US interests. Price versus principle. We are enormously pleased with these findings, said Tim Reif, the U.S. General Counsel for Trade, commenting on the latest decision in the longest-running transatlantic trade dispute. This report confirms that for decades the European Union has provided massive amounts of market-distorting launch aid and other subsidies that are inconsistent with WTO rules.
Relieved and proud. I think that goes for all of us at Airbus. This is a proud day for all those people, thousands as you know, who worked hard in this program for the last 6.5 years to see this day. The development.
Welcome to the world of science. Free-floating planets found with no star in sight. Japanese astronomers claim to have found free-floating planets which do not seem to orbit a star. Writing in Nature, they say they have found 10 Jupiter-sized objects which they could not connect to any solar system. They also believe such objects could be common as stars are throughout the Milky Way. The objects reveal themselves by bending the light of more distant stars, an effect called gravitational microlensing. Objects of large enough mass can bend light, as Albert Einstein predicted. If a large object passes in front of a more distant background star, it may act as a lens, bending and distorting the light of that star so that it may appear to brighten significantly. The researchers examined data collected from microlensing surveys of what is called the galactic bulge, the central area of our own Milky Way. They detected evidence of 10 Jupiter-sized objects with no parent star found within 10 astronomical units AU. 1 AU is equivalent to the distance between our Earth and Sun. Further analysis led to the conclusion that most of these objects did not have parent stars. And in sports, Shane Warne avoids final game ban but is fined by IPL. Australian cricket legend Shane Warne has escaped a ban which would have prematurely ended his playing career. 141 has been fined about £31,000 after a bust-up with Sanjay Dikshit, Rajasthan State Cricket Association secretary, after defeat for Rajasthan Royals in the Indian Premier League. Warne apologized for any distress his actions may have caused and appeared at a hearing in Mumbai on Tuesday. He is due to play his final game as a professional for Rajasthan on Friday. And before we close today's bulletin of news analysis, let's have a recap of the main points. Syria, US to impose sanctions on President Assad. Strauss-Kahn arrest, Maid scared but will testify. Stephen Lawrence pair face murder trial. Libya, 4 foreign journalists released. Afghanistan, 12 dead at protest over Nato raid. Indian aid program beset by corruption, World Bank. And there we end today's bulletin of news analysis. Be with us in the coming weeks too. Thank you.